Like he was really into who's that guy that I hate? Dave Matthews. Like he was really
Who's
into
that guy that I hate? Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Jay Vix grew up in Vernon, New Jersey, and attended his first local show in 1997. And that very night was when he decided he needed to get involved with this wonderful community of people who seemed to not give a giant shit what others thought about them. This, in fact, was the Jersey scene, obviously, since he grew up in Jersey and went to a show in Jersey. But I'm sure you guessed that by now, so moving on. Over the next several years, he went to countless shows, joined the band Red Rover, which we talk about in this episode, went on tour, which we also talk about, recorded twice, and passed out countless flyers. In 2009, he created the North Jersey Pop Punk 1994 to 2002 group on Facebook, which I talk about pretty much, I think, in every episode, and invited everyone he could from that time period. The group now has over 1,500 members and is a wonderful source of information from this time period. I've known Jay since back in that time because my old band Lane Meyer used to play a lot of shows with Red Rover. There's been a couple episodes where I talk about Red Rover because they were in the van with us when Sean heard the audio clip that was on the Day at the Fair demo tape, and they were I think I talked about this in Sean's episode. And crap, I forget what else, but it's really funny. And shit, I wish I could remember the episodes, but you should go back and just listen to all 70 something episodes so you can find it, even though they're all like 2 hours long. But yeah, go for it. I asked Jay if he wanted to talk about the scene in Red Rover, and he said, let's do it. And this is what we talked about. Antonio from the Dharma Boys, the North Jersey Pop Punk Facebook group, which I just mentioned, the Dillinger 4 show on Lake Apacon, Smack and Isaiah, Rob Heiner's bachelor party. Don't worry, Rob, it's not that bad. Brian Fallon, Jay's love affair with Rob Heiner, and a ton more. If you'd like to sponsor the show, just email thiswasthescene@gmail.com, and you can be in the intro of the show, like right now, where I would say, this show is sponsored by blah, blah, blah. Or you can be placed as an ad after the 2 teasers that I post on Instagram and Facebook every week before the next week's show, or you can have a banner placed on the website for a month. So just, again, email thiswasthescene@gmail.com. I can talk about pricing, and then we can go from there. Thanks again to all the Patreon supporters that constantly support every single month, and everyone who has donated a little bit here and there to the podcast, which you can also do at thiswasthescene.com. There's a bunch of buttons on there that say donate, and you just click on that, and then there's like a PayPal thing. You can donate whatever you want, or you can just become a Patreon. It's $1 a month, or you can pay whatever you want a month. Because all that goes to paying for hosting and really, honestly, keeping this thing alive, because I do freelance work for myself, and every single source of income helps me do this, and I appreciate you in advance. You can also support the show by going into thiswasthescene.com and buying merch, and that's it. Now I can't think of anything else to talk about, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some nostalgia. And you can share it by just going to the app you're listening to, hitting the share button, copying the code, and just texting a friend saying, hey, you should listen to this because I think you're going to love it, and then hit send. With that said, let's get started. So, what have you been up to, man? Up there in Greensboro.
I know I'm so close to you, and that's why I'm glad we're gonna go have lunch next week because I'm like it's so close. I love it here. It's when we were in South Boston. I mean, you were there. It was
Small.
Small. There's nothing to do, and we realized that when we wanted to do something fun, we would come to Greensboro because it was like an hour and 20 minutes away. And when Devin had the opportunity to get a job here, I was like, yes, let's do it. But like, let's make that let's look at it as a permanent home.
Yeah.
So we bought a house here, and we're here for a while. And of course, our adoption went through with Mackenzie. So she's been adopted for over a year now. So she's going to be 4 in October. So she's going to hopefully grow up here. And I've really gotten in with the local music scene here. Really, really well. Like I feel like I'm really integrated with a lot of people in the music scene, which has been really fun. So
nice.
Yeah. What about you?
I've just been I've been kind of like isolating myself in Raleigh. Like I just thought about it. I haven't left downtown. Like the furthest I think I've gone is Durham in the last year. but I don't really go any further than that. Like I haven't been out of the beach. I've never been to Wilmington, and
You need to get down there.
yeah, I know. And it's like I just kind of have this phobia about driving ever since I got back from traveling a couple years ago.
Hmm.
Plus, now I got this Jeep, and it's not really good with gas. I don't know. I'm just like adding all these excuses, so I just like never fucking go anywhere. But this town has so many venues,
Yeah, it does.
and but it just doesn't get any great shows. The only cool thing is coming up. Last week was Bad Religion in Lawrence Arms, and I didn't get a
Yes.
chance to go to it. And that's like literally like 6 minutes down the road.
I was gonna ask if you went to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because it was Tuesday night, and it was like
Yep.
$35. And I was like, I don't really know if I want to go to that.
My thoughts exactly. I could have went.
Yeah, but yeah, I've been talking to Brian from Plow. He lives up in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, yeah. I listened to that interview. That was an awesome interview, and I want to go to visit his store just so I can kind of geek out and talk to him for a few minutes.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. He right now. So Tom Martin's interview is launching tomorrow, and he's like, Brian's texting me. He's like, dude, Tom is like nonstop fucking texting me now because his interview's tomorrow, and he's like telling me to be nervous and all this stuff. I'm like, that guy is wild.
I remember that guy.
Yeah,
I feel like I remember him from the scene being like just always like there was nothing shy about the man.
yeah, and it's the interview's funny because it's what you'll learn is that it's all what's the word? Calculated.
Uh-huh.
And that's the funniest thing. Like I think in general he's a wild card, but he knows exactly what he's doing, which is the funniest thing. So when we get into the interview, I was like I don't know what I'm gonna talk to this guy about, and then we talked for like 2 hours.
Uh-huh.
It was just so funny, like that, and I mean like there's so many interviews I've done where I just have no idea where it's gonna go, and some people have been suggesting people to me recently,
Yeah.
and I've been like, and some of it has actually turned out really good, like the John Cheese one. That was a really good one. And then Chris Gethard, when I talked to him, the Some
Oh,
Kid one,
so good.
that was like I almost made me think about. I wish there was a way to do episodes where there's like a mystery aspect to it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that one was I like in real time. I'm finding out exactly what it is, like why he wanted to talk.
Yes, and he's a big deal too now. So
Yeah.
it was really good. Just as a side, if people are suggesting, and I don't know if anybody's brought it to you yet, but I think Antonio from the Dharma Boys would be
He would be funny.
phenomenal. Because A, he'd be funny because he's just crazy. But B, he knew everybody in the scene. There wasn't anybody that didn't know Antonio or Planet Antonio. So it might be a
What's Planet
good.
Antonio?
Planet Antonio is like his alter ego. He put out some CDs under Planet Antonio, had all these funny like parody type songs, and he wrote some songs too, and then he did prank calls. It was like this alter ego of his, and it was interesting, and we played with them a lot. So he would be a great interview because he's just another one of those wild cards. You don't really know what you're going to get, but he's super smart, and he really does know what he's talking about.
Yeah, there's that video from the Wayne Firehouse on
Yes.
on YouTube, and he's the one videotaping it, isn't he?
No, Cameron was, I think Cameron was videoing Antonio, but he was too. I think they switched off at some point.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
I think
'cause
he was
I've
also
seen it.
in the video as
That,
well. and I
yeah, he was interviewing people in the video.
Yes, Cameron. I want to say Cameron was behind the camera.
My favorite thing is when it goes by Barker and just seeing how young we look, but he looks at him, he's holding a video camera. Barker's like, "What the fuck is that thing?" You're
Yeah.
like, are you serious? Like, you clearly know it's a video camera.
Oh man. Yeah. Funny,
So,
funny.
so everyone listening, Jay here, I've known Jay since like the late 90s. He was in band Red Rover, which we're going to talk about, and he also started in 2009, the thing I've referenced pretty much every episode, I think, the North Jersey Pop Punk 1994 to 2002 Facebook group. So if you want to go check that out, and you should, I guess it's pretty much anyone from that era. We mostly post New Jersey stuff, like people take pictures of their patches and stickers and CDs, and it's mostly focused in New Jersey. No one's really from there promoting Florida stuff or California or any shit like that. But
Right.
yeah, so if you feel you want to kind of like we got like the guys from Bigwig in there, and I mean that's like a name I think more people would know. And if I said like Taxi Cab Samurai, I don't think a lot of people would know. Bet Dave, unless you're
Yeah, yeah.
if you do know that name, you should go and sign up. It's like there's like a lot of people in there, and we always just post about stuff. But
It's
Jay, yeah,
amazing. I've gotten in the last like 2 weeks, we're getting like one or two new people a day. And I kind of vet people now because because we can make so many connections that if they haven't been on Facebook since like somewhere between 2006 and 2011 and don't have like at least one mutual friend or 6 friends in the group, I've kind of haven't been letting them in. All the requests I've been getting recently is like, you have 34 mutual friends and this person has 87 friends in the group and this and that. And they've been on Facebook since 2006. And I'm like, in.
Yeah,
Like,
I should probably stick because you have me on as an admin.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can let people in. And so I've been just letting everyone in, so I'll just let you do it from now on.
Yeah, what
let you vet
happened
'em.
was I think twice and this group's been there for 10 years since the night I started it.
Crazy.
I can't believe it's 10 years and 1,500 members. And I didn't really the night I started the group, I invited like every single Facebook friend I had that I knew from that scene. And I think like the next day we had 100 people, but then all of a sudden it started mushrooming out. And I was kind of hoping that it would do that, but I really, I didn't know where it was going to go, and I didn't know it was going to lead to all of this. And your podcast has been awesome. So I think that twice in 10 years, 2 or 3 times, and I even make a special point to make a post in the group when I do it. I've had to like delete or kick somebody out or delete something because they're just promoting something that has nothing to do with that. I've even given a little bit of latitude to people who want to promote like maybe their bands now or maybe a local show now. I've given a little bit of latitude to that, but we had a few people that were just like, it was obvious spam. And I even went in and said, hey guys, just letting everybody know I deleted this because I just didn't think it was right. And a lot of people like it when I've posted that. I've gotten a lot of good positive reactions to it. So I try not to do it because I don't want to be like the scene police of this page, but I also want to keep it legit and to its time period.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of balanced in the beginning when I was promoting the podcast because it talks specifically about that time. I'll always post on Friday and I'll do the teaser on Monday. But there was a point where about midweek on Thursday, I stopped sharing it because I didn't want to be overly, because I'm pretty sure, because at the beginning everyone was like, oh yeah. Then I started doing things outside of the scene. I kind of noticed the engagement kind of backed off, but that doesn't mean that people aren't interested. But I didn't want to be like, hey, here's another thing, like where it's annoying people. So I kind of just slowed down a bit. And that now that I have since I had the Facebook page, I'll post a lot more on that because that's specifically to this thing.
Right.
But I don't want to take away completely from the group and just be like, this is all about the podcast, because it's just like one piece that came from that group being there, which is so funny because the fact that you started it in 2009 and it really didn't even get a lot of use. There was this boom in like the end of 2017, and that's why I got the idea for the podcast. There was just out of nowhere, just this flood of pictures started coming in where it was like, I don't even remember what started it.
I will tell you that every year around the holidays, we get more pictures and audio recordings. And the only thing I know I can attribute it to, because people will say this in their comment, is like, hey, I'm home visiting my parents and look what I found in the attic, that type of thing. So a lot of people are going home for the holidays and they're having this nostalgic time period because a lot of people have moved away, and then they would post stuff. And you're right. I think you're right. Around the end of 2017, we did get a big boom. And I don't know, maybe we hit a tipping point with the number of people it takes in a group to create that kind of engagement or use, but people have really latched on. And I think what Joe Polito's doing with the music.
Oh, that was it. Joe, that definitely.
Joe really helped with the group. And then, of course, you starting the podcast. I mean, I feel like we've created our own youthful scene for a bunch of adults who don't want to forget our youthful time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing is that it's it's always like that time period is done and it's set in stone. You can't change that. And I think that's what makes it so cool. And
Hmm.
plus there was like that 20-year marker. I mean, that was like last year, the reason all that stuff went down because it was legit 20 years when we had the show because Humble and us, we had put out our CDs then. So there was it was it was kind of like that perfect timing for all
Yep.
that. But yeah, Joe Polito just putting that fucking that website up and all
It's
those songs, I can't. Even in his interview, I'm like, how did you spend that much time doing that shit?
We had talked about doing something like that, and I think Joe was in the original conversations. I know John Randall was part of it too because he's really good with like pulling information together, and like he wanted to start like a wiki of everything, and then we kind of there was a it was like in 2013 or 14 we had kind of a bunch of people started to ramp up to try to do something more, and then like anything else without like one organizer trying to like spearhead this whole thing and a bunch of people just with their own ideas, it kind of just fizzled. But I think Joe kind of held on and was like, let's get all the music together, and he could kind of create almost his own type of archive that way, which he did. He called it the archives, and
Yeah.
then I think it's been a perfect complement to the group, and then I think the podcast has been awesome too. And I'm wondering just what's going to be next, like what's the next idea that's going to get spawned from the group that's going to keep everybody engaged and give them another outlet, because no, you're right, nobody wants to forget that time period. It was so life changing.
Well, I think yeah, that's kind of why I opened up I really wanted to get a website up for the podcast because there's so much. It's just this big open like space to build on it. Like the Facebook group's cool because we can talk in real time, but the website that I put up, because that's why I'm asking people to submit stories, because there's just so much there. It's like a place where people can say, oh, like if someone listens to this an episode, they could say, oh, I was at that show and this is what I saw, or here's something, I was a roadie for a band and here's a story. Because I keep saying, I was like, I can't interview everybody, but there's so much cool stories from back then that people can submit. So I think like that's kind of like where I'm trying to do that and have that lead back to the Facebook group so people can like chat. And I don't know, that's what I'm trying to do.
I think it's great. I read Scotty Kivowitz's story and Sean Bergen's story, which Sean Bergen's story about Chris Carrabba was just ridiculously funny. And I like Sunny Day Real Estate too, so I could almost like see that whole interaction going down, and it was just hysterical. If anybody's listening and you haven't read the story on this you're on the website, then please do. It was great.
Yeah, Sean, it just has no fucking filter.
No filter.
He
That's
doesn't
funny.
care. But yeah, man. So I want to jump into this. So yeah,
Yeah.
Jay started the Facebook group, but the reason he got involved in this whole thing back in the day is because he was in this band called Red Rover, and I want to go just structure this like every episode and
Yeah.
go back in time and lead it up to the bands, like eventually breaking up, but fill in all those meaty parts in the middle with Eddie's stories and things like that. Yeah, but go back in time, man. Like, tell me like how you got into music, how that led to punk rock.
Perfect. So I knew because I've listened to this.
You know the structure, so
I know the structure, so it should go. And I was trying to think of it, and I'm like, I know Michael just guided this whole thing. So, but so I've always been into music. I remember, and I still talk about it with my mom. I remember being, I don't know how old I was, but I would guess 3 or 4 years old, and there was an album by Carole King called Tapestry, and probably anybody in the scene won't really give a shit about that, but my mom used to clean the house, and she would blast this Carole King Tapestry album on vinyl, and they would always play a lot of Billy Joel too. Like my mom and even my dad, they're both Billy Joel fans. So from as long as I can remember, like I've known a lot of the words to the Tapestry album, and I know I've seen Billy Joel several times. So I was always a big Billy Joel fan, always a music fan, and then more towards the punk rock side of things. I remember it was a come and go, love hate. No, it was never a hate relationship. It was like a love it or leave it relationship for me. I remember being in 6th or 7th grade, and I grew up in Vernon, New Jersey, before I moved to Boonton.
I was gonna ask you
Um,
that. Okay, I didn't know you were
yeah,
in Vernon.
I started in Vernon from like second grade till after my sophomore year in high school. And I remember in like sixth grade, there was in our neighborhood we had a couple of kids who were into skateboarding, and like all of them, I too wanted to skateboard, except there was a problem. I sucked. I mean, I never could do an ollie. Like I couldn't do. I was not a skateboarder from day one. I'd watch my friends bomb down hills, and the minute my skateboard started wobbling, I like did it. So I knew it wasn't for me, but I liked that scene, and a lot of those they were all listening to like I remember listening to the Dead Milkmen, and the song is so unpolitically and not right for today's times, but I just remember listening to the song called "Taking Retards to the Zoo," and I just thought it was like the greatest song I had ever heard. And Bitchin' Camaro, and Punk Rock Girl, like these are all like these were all our skateboarding songs. I remember listening to 7 Seconds and Suicidal Tendencies, and I loved it, but I didn't know that I didn't really understand that there was this thing like this scene where kids would go to punk rock shows. Like I didn't know that in 1987, 1988. I didn't really know.
Wait,
Um,
that was in '88.
yeah, I graduated high school in 94, so I'm thinking sixth grade was like 88, right?
God, I can't do math for shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. About 6 years before I graduated high school, 12 years. Yeah, yeah. So it was
Okay.
about 88.
Wow.
88, 89, maybe seventh grade, going in eighth grade for a little bit of time period there. And then I kind of got a like I kind of got away from it. I remember listening to um like hip hop and rap. Like I got into Das Effects and Naughty by Nature and Fushnikins and all these hip hop bands. I went through that little phase like my like freshman year in high school. Um, I've always just liked a lot of different genres anyway. Like even to this day, like I don't just have to listen to punk rock, although it's probably 60% of what I listen to. Um, but I got into other music, and then of course Nirvana happened and um, grunge. But I moved to Boonton. I was not doing good in Vernon High School. I mean, I was ready to drop out of high school after my sophomore year. Like, I hated it.
Just
I
because you
just
hated it,
didn't.
or you just like?
I didn't have a ton of friends. I mean, I'm friends with people on Facebook from Vernon now that I really like and respect. But I never really felt that connected when I was there at that age, and I was going through some stuff, and my mom and dad were divorced, so I had the option to go move to Boonton where my mom was and go to high school in Boonton. So after my sophomore year, the summer I had made the decision, I moved to Boonton and started my junior year at Boonton High School, and that's when kind of things really took off for in a number of ways, good and bad. But I did much better in school, and a lot of kids in Boonton had really good musical tastes. I remember being in, I think it was my junior, I think it was junior year, the end of junior year, and there was a mixtape going around, and it had Unsung by Helmet, but it had Waiting Room by Fugazi on it.
Oh yeah.
And everybody was going bananas for Fugazi, and I loved that song. And I knew like there was a band from my high school, and I'm still friends with the people that were in that band. They were called Madism, and they would go around and play with. I mean, they were introducing me to like Madball, and there was a Dog Eat Dog. Do you remember Dog Eat Dog?
I remember
They
hearing them
were
on a
big in like
yeah, like a skate video. I remember hearing them on it.
yeah, so a lot of and then of course 311 and Nirvana had kind of coming. I remember when Kurt Cobain died, that day was like awful. I remember where I was. It was some people talk about like when John F. Kennedy got shot, and I'm like, I remember when Kurt Cobain blew his brains out and I found out about it. But so that was like one of those life changing things. But again, it was kind of more like the hardcore scene, less about punk rock, and I still didn't really know about local shows. And this is '94.
But they were so new at that point.
I guess.
I mean, they were
Yeah.
like, I mean, I always compare things to when we got into it in 96, 97, where there was a lot of kids that would go. So prior to that, when I talk to people and they're talking about playing shows back in the early '90s. It's just so like I feel very happy that I got into the part where it got popular, just because I mean, it's just that's where I was. But
It was like a wave, and I didn't know about it either. I actually started dating a girl in 90 late it was early 1997, and this is like kind of my like introduction to the scene. And you knew her because she worked at Craigmere too. And she knew you guys, and I had met her. This is a good story. This will tie into what James Menefee said in his interview.
Yeah.
So in James Funsize interview, he talked about a pen pal he had in Denville, New Jersey, named Kim.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Kim's best friend at the time was another Kim, and my friend Mike worked with one of the Kims, and we kind of all went out, and I met this other Kim, and we ended up dating, and the two Kims went to a ton of shows. So they were my introduction to the scene. Like I remember them saying, "Oh, we're going to see this band called Weston at the Pipeline in Newark," and then like the first time I ever heard Weston, they instantly became my favorite band, and to this day I think they still are my favorite band. But my first shows were a Weston show at the Boot American Legion that got shut down. I think it might have been with Oblivion and Humble, but the cops shut it down when Weston was starting to play, and they tried to play acoustic. Were you there?
Oh yeah, that was your first show?
No, it wasn't my first show, but it was like in my first like 3 or 4 shows.
Yeah, I have pictures from that. We went to, do we play? I don't think we, shit, I forget. No, Humble played, because I have a bunch of pictures. There's one where Granick, you remember Granick, right?
Yeah, I know Brian Granick, yep.
So Granick will not come on this thing, by the way. Like Sean Lanemeyer asked him, and he's like, he wants to forget about that time for some reason. I was like,
gosh, no way.
dude. Yeah, but he fucked up his leg at that show, so I have a photo of him doing that, and then I think there was like Josh Polhemus was playing trombone on like America's Funniest. I think that might have been the show where he would get up sometimes with Humble and play like trombone. He'd have his Hawaiian shirt on and sunglasses. But then and then Bigwig played, and then the thing is we still might have been Congress of Cow, and then Weston played, because that was right when Chuck left. So Jesse was in pajamas, and Jim had his like the rose shirt thing on, and the cops came in, and so they played Elephant and something else. Yeah. I
remember. I was there. And then that was one of the first shows. The other one of my first shows that I remember, talking about getting into the punk scene, was I was at the Chris Barker Backyard show.
Were you?
I was there. I went with Kim and Kim.
Dillinger 4 and the Vapids.
Yeah. But did Dillinger 4 ever play that show?
No, we got shut down during the Vapids. I have more of a story, but if you have a story, like I'll have, because I keep cutting you off.
Well, I just remember, I think wasn't was High Strung. It was like their first show after like Jeremy was in Sticker, I think. Am I right about that? I don't know. You might clarify me. If not, Jeremy might on.
Yeah, he was in Sticker, and then he quit, and then he did because we talked about that in the Craig Marshall interview and Jeremy's interview.
I got a High Strung tape that day. I remember. I still have it. I still have that High Strung cassette.
Pat was there selling tapes. I don't know if they played, but he was there selling or like giving tapes away.
Maybe that's what it was.
Okay.
Yep. But then it just like once I did that, and Kim started making me. I'm gonna have to write her on Facebook and tell her I referenced her like 38 million times in this. But she would make mixtapes for me. So like I just got hooked. Like I was hook, line, and sinker. I fell in love with this music scene, and I was just going. We just went to tons of shows. It's funny. One other little story about it is I went to Cat's Cradle for the Get Up Kids show.
Yeah.
And when I was my first time seeing the Get Up Kids, I was at the Skaters World show that they opened for Jimmy Eat World.
Yeah.
I did not get to stay to see Jimmy Eat World that night because I had to get Kim home for her curfew at the time. And I had to leave after the Get Up Kids. But I went there to see Jimmy Eat World, and I left there like, holy crap, I just saw the Get Up Kids are absolutely amazing. Like I didn't even care that I didn't see Jimmy Eat World, and I've subsequently got to see Jimmy Eat World many times. But I recently went to Cat's Cradle in Chapel Hill to see the Get Up Kids on this tour, and there's a difference between like 22-year-old or 21-year-old me and a difference between 43-year-old me, because after the show, I went up to each of the Get Up Kids and I talked to them. I was talking about that show, talking about the scene. I didn't like, there was no, to me, they became human at now. But when you're 21, 22, a lot of these bands that were on tour, we just looked up to them as like they were unapproachable, and they really weren't. And and some bands back then I didn't look at as unapproachable, but I've become friends with people over the years. Like I'm friends with the guys in Weston now. And Jimmy from Weston, who's now James on Beach Slang. But Jeremiah is going to teach. We're going to fly to Jackson Hole this winter, and Weston's drummer Jeremiah is going to teach Mackenzie how to get on a snowboard. What? So yeah. So
wait, can I cut you off about the Jimmy Eat World show?
Yeah.
So two things. One, to go way back, not way back. This has been to go way back to 5 minutes ago when you're talking about the Barker backyard show. Yeah. So the Vapids are playing, and the guy who we had just met them, and they were on tour, and it was a 3-piece. They were like kind of Ramon style, and the really nice guys. They're from Canada, and the singer, he was hammered, and so he's playing. And I remember the cops came, and we literally cut the power. And we're like, yo, you gotta stop. And no, it's like right before we cut the power, they stopped playing. He gets the mic. He's like, yeah, but I just want to play the next song called I Just Want to Fuck Around. And like we had to cut the mic. And so we cut it as he's saying that. And Chris is like, oh God. And then the Jimmy Eat World show, so the funny thing about that is they showed up that night. That was the first time I had ever heard of the Get Up Kids, and I saw them. I'm like, Jesus Christ. And I got 4 Minute Mile, I think that in Woodson that night. But then Jimmy Eat World went on, and I was so pissed. No, I wasn't pissed off. I was bummed out because they played a lot of songs from Clarity before it came out.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know the songs, and I was so like, fuck, this blows. And then, fast forward, Clarity is one of my favorite albums. So, but seeing a band play their album before you know the album, it's
awful.
Yeah, and you're like, come on. So I loved the Get Up Kids so much more than Jimmy Eat World that night. And the only time I ever saw Jimmy Eat World where they were kicked so much ass was at Coney Island High, and not the time when they were late and only got to play like 3 songs before the Promise Ring. It was when they played with At the Drive-In at Coney Island High.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so okay. I just had to
No, I'm glad you said that, because one of the things I was talking to the Get Up Kids, and I was telling them the show, and Matt Pryor from the Get Up Kids, he's like, wait, were you really at the Skaters World show? And I was like, no, really I was. And I told him, because Rob Heiner wrote me on Facebook earlier that day, and he's like, that Skaters World show is the one where like 200 kids were at, but 1,200 claimed to be there. And I was like, I agree. But I remember I have like a legit story about it. And I told Matt Pryor the story, and he's like, no, I believe you were there. And I was like, no, I totally was there. And I was like, but I didn't get to stay for Jimmy Eat World. And I don't remember if it was Matt Pryor or one of the other guys on the Get Up Kids. Like, that's okay. They weren't that good that night.
Yeah, and they honestly, they weren't even that good. I think that it was. No, that wasn't one of the time. There was one time where the bass player got destroyed. He was so drunk.
Oh gosh.
But yeah, he was just like a tree. He just stood there. I was like, this guy's boring as fuck. Yeah, I was not. I was not impressed, because that was the time where I wanted to see bands, because I just saw Bigwig and they just would explode on stage. So I was like, I want every band to do this. And when they didn't, I was like, this fucking blows. But, yeah.
So anyway, that got me really interested in the scene, and then I was hooked. And then I realized through that scene that all I had to do was learn how to play an instrument. I didn't have to really play it that well, and I too could be in a band. And that's kind of what I gravitated towards next.
I think that's everyone's take on it, or their viewpoint before they start playing bass.
Yeah.
Bass is the entry instrument, which I've said before. It's the easiest one because it's one string and one fret, and the guitar is just, the coordination takes time. But bass usually always leads to guitar, but it never goes through. You don't go bass and go, oh, I'll just play the drum. I'll just start playing the drums.
Right.
There was someone I interviewed recently who was a drummer. I think it might have been Josh from Sicko, where they talked about they just started playing drums. I'm like, you can't just choose that as your just like, oh, I want to just start playing music. Oh, it's 16 or something. Oh, I'll just play drums.
Yeah, good luck with a lot of parents on that too.
Yeah,
Like,
that makes
yeah,
sense. Parents love
yeah.
that shit. So what? So okay. So go on.
So I went to I
So
went
you legit know where I'm taking this. So I'm just like letting you go. Like
yeah. So I'm giving you the whole timeline. I know where you're going. I hope it's not boring. But
yeah.
so I went to a pawn shop on Route 46 in Rockaway, and bought the Fender Squire bass that I have to this day,
Oh wow.
and a case for it for $225. I probably had $226 in my checking account if I had a checking account at that time. Actually, I had to have a little bit more because I think I got a practice amp too that I still have that I'm looking at right now. And I started playing, and the internet was still. I mean, it was still fairly new in 1998. I mean, we had internet for a while,
Yeah. Not the way
but
we
it
have it
wasn't
now.
like it is now
No.
by any means. So I found these tab websites, and I remember printing so many bass tabs out. I would just eat up my dad's like ink cartridge printing bass tabs, and I was looking for like Blink 182 and Green Day, and which Green Day is a lot harder than a lot, but like
Yeah. Oh
Mike
yeah.
Dirnt's actually a really good bass player.
Yeah.
But like I would look up just different bass tabs, and I would try to play it, and then try to play it along with songs, and then I found a couple of people that I had a friend who played drums and a friend who played guitar, and we used to go rent a rehearsal spot in Rockaway. I forget the name of it. It was right off 46 also.
I think we played that.
And we
Yeah.
would go there late at night, and we would just play, and it was so bad. I remember trying to play Summer of '69, like the MXPX version, like the cover, and or was it Summer of '69? Yeah, yeah, or Atari's. I don't remember. Somebody's cover. No, I think it was MXPX,
I think
and
that project.
and then we try to play "Damn It" by Blink 182 and different. I remember playing "Machine Head" by Bush. I don't know why, but I just remember playing a lot of songs to try to get better. And then one day in August, I was like, I want to join a band. And I had gotten okay enough that like I knew how to jump and play at the same time. And I was like, that's all I need to know.
That's
I
the
don't really need to know
requirement.
much more than that. I'm good.
That is the requirement.
Yep. And I saw an ad in, I don't know whether it was the Aquarian or some other paper. John or Cameron from my old band would probably remember. They ran an ad because they were coming out of a band called the Billy Rivers, which is like a ska band,
They
ska
were in,
punk band.
wait, they were in Billy Rivers?
Yeah, John and Cameron were in Billy Rivers.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Okay.
And the name of the band Billy Rivers. I'm sure I'm accurate and correct on this, but they liked Smashing Pumpkins and Weezer, so they named the band Billy Rivers because Billy Corgan and Rivers Cuomo.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know. Okay.
Yep. And so I had never seen Billy Rivers, but we had been at similar shows. Like I remember we were all at I think it was right after I had tried out, or right before I tried out. But they were at the Weston show that Bomb Shelter put on at Springfield. And I think it was Bigwig and Weston Springfield Elks Lodge. I remember being at that show and
I
meeting.
will go on the archive and I will see if I can find the flyer.
Oh, it's on there. Yeah, it's totally on there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Weston Bigwig, Springfield Elks. It was a Bomb Shelter show.
What year was this?
That was 99.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, this month, actually, right, like this week is 20 years since Red Rover formed.
That's so
Like
weird
this week is 20 years.
That's funny that we're doing this interview exactly
Yeah.
at this time. That's odd. Wow,
And
imagine that. Like 20 years ago when you got in the band with these guys. It's like,
Yeah.
now I'm going to talk about this in 20 years on this thing called a podcast
On a-
that doesn't
yeah.
exist. That doesn't exist.
Yep. August of 99, I joined Red Rover, and we started looking for a lead guitarist because it was just three of us. And I remember being at the tryout. They had a couple of songs written. Johnny Alter Ego was the first one I tried out with, and that one ended up on our split with the Dharma Boys. And then, oh gosh, there was another one. I think it was Every Day. I don't know, but they had just some basic parts to it. It wasn't written out fully, but Johnny Alter Ego was pretty much done. And I learned it like, we went through it a few times, and I pretty much learned the song. I didn't have my bass line, but I was just kind of mimicking what John was doing on the rhythm guitar before I created a bass line for it. And I remember there was a pause, and I jumped, and we practiced in Cameron's living room in Haledon, North Haledon, and I jumped, and I came down exactly right on the note that I was supposed to. Like, I couldn't have timed it better, because I've messed up my jumps plenty of times with like messing up time, but I just nailed it. And they of course didn't tell me anything that day when I left, but they called me. I don't remember how many days later. It was a couple days later, and they asked me to be in the band, and that was like the greatest day ever.
They're like, we love your sweet jumps.
Yeah. You suck as a bass player, but you can jump. So.
Man, you nailed that note.
Nailed that jump. So it was good. I felt like, well, this is good. I don't have to worry about learning other people's songs necessarily. I can be part of the writing creative process, which means that I could kind of do what I want. And we started practicing, and we played our first show in Vermont. I don't know why we didn't play in New Jersey, but I felt like if we're going to play a shitty first show, we should do it where people might never see us again. And Cameron had gotten like the flu or pneumonia, something. Cameron was sick. Like, he should not have gotten in the van. He should not have gone to Vermont. We should have not have played that show. But he played, and he was sick as a dog. And we did suck. I mean, it was really bad. But then we came right back home, and we had a show in Summit at the church. There was a church there, Christ Church, maybe. I don't remember. But remember Claudia?
I found the flyer. It's Christ Church and Summit. So because you guys did a flyer, it was come check out the new kids in town, Red Rover, ex Billy Rivers. And upcoming shows are November 26th, Christchurch and Summit with Humble Beginnings, Knuckle Sandwich, Dharma Boys, Prevent Falls, and Left Behind. And then the 27th is Skaters World with IDK, AKP, and more. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, it's just documented right here. That's so awesome.
Yep, those were our first two New Jersey shows. We had already played the one show in Vermont, and I think we played. It was on the archive. Like, I did the Wayback Machine on the internet where you can go back and see, and I found the old Red Rover site, and it had a list of all the shows we played with, the bands we played with and stuff, and it was blowing my mind. There were some bands that we played with that got big that I was like, really, we played with them? I remember playing in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I remember playing with you guys, in New Bedford. So I remember specifically conversations with you up there, and I think it was Smack and Isaiah who went on to be
Wilhelm Scream.
Wilhelm Scream, and they were like, I mean, I didn't see that coming, but I mean, they got huge. It's crazy.
You know what's funny about those guys? We would play with them, and they were great guys, and they were huge in New Bedford, and they were really talented musicians. But when we'd go to the New Bedford shows, Russ, who would put them on, he'd be like, yeah, this band Smack and Isaiah, they're like the biggest band up here, and they were very Fat Recordsy. And we'd watch it. I was like, yeah, I'm like, they're good, but I never saw like this huge crowd going nuts for them. And so when we ended up breaking up in 2000, at the end of early mid 2000, I just I would just be like, okay, well, this is the era where it seems like everyone's kind of falling apart. And then they came out as Wilhelm Scream, which was like the band that I remembered. Like Smack and Isaiah, I couldn't tell you any Smack and Isaiah songs. Like I didn't really. We would just hang out with them and drink afterwards, and they were a lot of fun. But I didn't really. There's some bands we were friends with, but I didn't really would completely know their songs. But Wilhelm Scream was so fucking good. Like they had some great songs afterwards. But I didn't. Yeah, like you said, like I didn't see them doing that and then going down that path. They just stuck with it.
Yeah, and I think it really shows you the difference between what we had in New Jersey and what people had outside of New Jersey. Like, there really wasn't I mean, I'm sure there were pockets, but, we would go up to Reflections. There wouldn't be a ton of kids there. But I do remember I liked playing there, and I do remember going out to eat somewhere afterwards. And to this day, I found it only one time in the South. But I remember them introducing me to this weird kind of sausage or something called linguiça. It was Portuguese. It was a big Portuguese town, New Bedford, Massachusetts. Yep. And then they drank coffee milk. And it was like chocolate milk, but it was coffee flavored instead of chocolate flavored. I've never to this day found that anywhere else, coffee milk. But I'll never forget it either. But yeah, so New Bedford, anytime I meet somebody from like eastern or southeastern Massachusetts, I'm always like, oh, let me tell you about that, or I'll use it to like prove my street cred. Like, no, I've had linguiça and coffee milk, and people will give me like a wink, like, yeah, you've been there.
Well, that was like Reflections was an AA meeting
It
place.
was,
So
yeah.
the meetings were held like upstairs or downstairs. So we'd show up with our van and loading stuff in, and we just people hanging outside smoking cigarettes. They were there for like the AA meetings, and we're like, what?
I remember playing
Okay.
chess or checkers with a guy in AA in the clubhouse after the show one night, or while another band was playing. Yeah, I went over
I
to
think I
the.
remember that. Was that when
Yeah,
we played with you guys?
yeah, I think so. We
I
played there
do
two or
remember
three
that.
times, but I
Yeah.
remember sitting with a guy over there just playing. Probably chess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
know.
it was Checkers. It was in the next room.
Maybe.
It was the
Yep.
room next to adjacent to the show where the show was.
And I can guarantee if it was checkers that I lost, because recently Devin and I went somewhere for her birthday. I took her on an overnight trip, and they had like a checkers set there. And Devin schooled me 2 games in a row at checkers. I'm like the worst. I don't know. That to me, it doesn't seem like it should be that hard, but I suck at checkers.
You guys get out of town. You're like, we're gonna have a hot night at Checkers.
We're gonna have a hot date night, and we're gonna play checkers. Actually, it was the morning right before we left. We played 2 games of checkers because we had till noon to check out, and the place was just so cool. We sat out on our deck and checkers. It was cool. So, but anyway, I suck at checkers. So anyway, it's a different story, different game, different day. But
Well, real quick, how did you guys? Because you had your logo that I remember. Because even on your "Come check out the new kids in town," you had the logo already designed. It's the R's are mirroring each other with some like target thing.
yeah, it was like crosshairs.
Yeah, who came up with that?
I want to say it was Cameron. Cameron or John had they had like an early version of Illustrator, I think, and I still to this day, I mean, I'm okay with Photoshop and stuff, but they knew how to create that in Illustrator. I had no idea, and they did it. Like, so I don't remember. It might have been John, but I feel like Cameron had a lot to do with like the concept, and John maybe did. I don't remember, and I don't want to say, but they'll probably kill me after listening to this. Of like, no, come on, you're forgetting something. But it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I might have had some input and say, yeah, that looks really cool, but I didn't design it.
What was like when you guys put the band together? Wait, who was the fourth member? I know CJ.
CJ joined after, but we had Chris Reed from Booton was our first lead guitar player, and he's a ridiculously amazing guitar player.
I don't remember Chris.
Chris didn't have the punk background. He kind of he was just so good on guitar that we were like, oh my gosh, like this, it's ridiculous. Like his talent level is through the roof. But technical guitar stuff, like he was really into who's that guy that I hate? Dave Matthews. Like he was really into
that
like
guy that I hate.
Yeah, he was really into like really like better, like I don't know how you'd say it, but he really technical, like good trained guitar techniques, and he did his best to like be part of like, you know, play pop punk, and I just think for him it wasn't really what he wanted, so I don't think he was ever really that happy in the band. And when he left, we had played a couple shows. We played a ton of shows with the Dharma Boys. They were like our bros in the scene. Like we were always, you look back at all the shows we played, we did our split with them. We hung out with them. You know, we did a lot with the Dharma Boys. But we started playing with a band called Enough Is Enough. And we met CJ, and CJ was their drummer. And when we were looking for a guitar player, CJ was like, I'd like to come try out for you guys. And we're like, we don't need a drummer, CJ. We have a drummer. And he's like, no, on lead guitar. And we're like, well, we didn't know you played lead guitar. He's like, I really don't, but you know, I can do it. And he came to the first practice, and that CJ is like a prodigy. He is a prodigy musician, I think. Like maybe not a prodigy in the fact that he's like super skilled. I mean, he's good. He's great. I would never, you know, he's way better musician than I ever will be, but he he might not be the best guitar player in the world, but you want to talk about like eliminating a learning curve. Like he picked up every lead part, created new lead parts, and was playing shows with us and on tour with us in like 3 weeks, from behind a drum set to going on tour with us as a lead guitar player.
That's what you told me. So when I was, just everyone listening, like a couple years ago, I sold everything and traveled, and I stayed with Jay and his wife for like about 2 days, and then I came to.
2 days.
It was right before I came to Raleigh and found Raleigh, which was so wild. But are you telling me that? Because we just reminisced for one night, like a whole bunch. Like you had like a video of some show you guys played. What was that? Where was
we
that
had a video? We had our tour video, which Cameron recorded.
Yes.
But then we had our last show of tour. We needed a show, and I wrote Gabe Saporta a message, and I said, hey, you guys are in Detroit on tour with the Stereo. Is there any possible chance in hell that we could open the show? We're going to be out, that way. We were actually like 12 hours away. We played Seed Park in Bridgeport, Illinois the night before Detroit, so it was a long drive. But I didn't tell them that. I was just like, is there any chance? And he's like, let me get in touch with Eva and I'll let you know. And Eva Feda called me and said, Gabe called and you guys can open the show in Detroit that day. And we recorded that whole show. So I don't know if we have this. I think we have the Stereo on recording, but definitely have our set and Midtown set from Detroit in summer of 2000.
So you guys started in '99, and then like what would you like kind of like tell people like what your style was?
Musical style?
Yeah.
It's funny. Some people, I feel like we just called ourselves pop punk, but I think Cameron used to say something like indie rock, pop punk, something. He had took about 7 genres and mushed them together. But I remember when we played our CD release show, somebody wrote, there was a review in a zine, and it might have been Carlisle Records in Pennsylvania or somebody wrote that we had a real Promise Ring type sound, and I never saw that. But we did write some tongue-in-cheeky kind of lyrics like the Promise Ring did. And I thought we were kind of poppy like them, but I guess that's for me where the parallels stopped. But I really feel like we set out to be kind of a, not a Fat Records sounding band, and not necessarily a drive-through sounding band, but kind of, I guess something like, what were the Promise Ring? Like something maybe take a Jade Tree and mix it with a drive-through, like somewhere in there. Like those were our influences. So okay. I think we just tried to write poppy songs that weren't too long, and didn't really go off into crazy musical tangents. I think we were just trying to write straightforward songs. And Cameron, he could write really good lyrics. So he wrote a lot of the lyrics, and John would sing. And John and Cameron sang too. Actually, we had a lot of songs where all 4 of us
I do remember that. And you guys harmonize too?
We would sometimes we'd have practices where we'd just unplug and turn off all our instruments, and we would just work on the vocal parts.
Yeah, that's what you told me. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's so crazy. God, me and Chris, there's no fucking way we would ever do that.
It's frustrating because I'm not a great singer, and I had to really work hard to just hit. I remember John telling me all the time, I was like, you're flat, you're flat, you're flat. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to fix that. And then he would try to do it, and I would try. John could sing. John Randall can still, I'm sure he could still sing, but I remember working with them to try to be better at everything I did. But yeah, we would definitely, I remember times sitting in Cameron's apartment just doing vocal stuff. Like when we did the song Drive, or at the end was I'm Not Driving.
Yeah.
We worked on that several times, I remember, because we all kind of had a little something different in the way we sang it. And sometimes I forget what my part was on stage, and I just end up mimicking John. But yeah, we did. We worked on our vocals a lot. We tried to do 4-part vocals at times.
I think the one thing I remember about you guys was like, you guys were like the nicest fucking band. Like almost the point where I'm like, they've got to be bullshitting me. Like I remember one time I was kind of like suspect about John for a while. I'm like, there's no way this guy is this fucking nice. Like it
Oh
was
my
like I was
gosh.
like he's just too nice. But I was like, no, he's just a really nice fucking guy.
No,
Like
that's how genuine he's totally. And you've gotten to know John over the years, and I remember being at a particular bachelor party with
I
you
was
where
gonna,
John was there,
yeah.
and there is he's so authentic. He's really is one of the nicest people I know in my life, and I'm so blessed and honored that he's still a friend of mine after all these years. One of my closest friends.
Yeah, especially after that bachelor party.
Yeah. Well,
Not like anything really bad. It was just like things breaking. We're like, oh, did you know? Actually, wait. Oh no, that was a different house. There was one we went to, and the house is like gone. But that was Parker's. Never mind.
yeah, no, for anybody listening to the podcast, they're going to be like, I'm tuning out here, but I just one word from that whole weekend, and the people that were in the know would know, but just Gunther. Do you remember Gunther?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
all I'm going to say
Oh
about that.
my
I don't want to lose
God.
people on the
Yes,
podcast.
yes. Oh
Okay.
my God. Yeah, I remember the next day I pulled up into my driveway and I had this basically a contusion in my thigh when I was running in the woods and I
Oh my
fell
God.
and I had my iTunes charger in my pocket and I fell on it. And when I woke up the next morning we all had to leave, I couldn't walk. Like I legit couldn't walk. And I think it was my right leg, which I had to like use the gas and the brake. I'm going, I have to drive like 2.5 hours home. Like I don't know if I could fucking do this.
Oh God.
Yeah, that was
That
that was a
yeah.
thing.
Anyway, yeah. They're just in lies how we've managed. And again, part of something I'd like to circle back to at the end is just part of how that time period has forged some relationships in my life that I'm so proud to still have to this day. So.
Where did you guys record? Like, you guys, yeah, where'd you record your first? Was it a demo tape or did you just go right for a CD?
Right. So we did a demo in Cameron's living room, a live demo, and Antonio had a little 4-track recorder, Antonio from the Dharma Boys. And he recorded this rough demo, which is still out there. And I think Joe Polito got a hold of that and put it on the Pop Punk archives. And Joe, feel free to take that down whenever you want. But no, it was so rough and just it wasn't mixed. It was
Wait,
just
wait,
so,
which one is this?
it was the demo, 4-song demo.
Okay, I'm looking at their
It
page
was
right now.
bad. There was no
Oh,
mixing. It was never mastered. It was just recorded live in a living room.
oh, okay.
But we wanted to get something out. And this is a good. I was working for I don't know what it's called now. It's probably Pfizer. But at the time, it was like Warner Lambert or Park Davis. It's been so many different things in Mars Plains. And I got a temp job there because that was how I made a living. I was older than the rest of the guys in the band, so I was already living on my own with all these bills to pay, and I'm trying to like figure out how I'm going to tour around work. And I had a temp job when we first started because it was easy. I could be like end an assignment, and I didn't really care because I could always get another temp job. But Park Davis or Pfizer or whatever, they owned. It wasn't Wrigley. Or maybe it was Wrigley. They owned some gum, Trident gum. It was Trident. So what we did is we got plastic Ziploc bags and we would put our demo CD with a piece of Trident gum, kind of like you get in a baseball card pack. We would put a piece of gum. So we were like, well, here's our demo. It costs like $1, but at least you get a piece of gum if you don't like the music. And that was kind of like the attitude. And I remember just getting all these because I got it at like such a cheap deal in the company store. I would buy all this Trident gum, and we would just put a piece of gum or a pack of gum in every CD.
That's
Demo CD.
genius. That's
Yeah,
so great.
yeah. So we did. I remember doing that. But anyway, then it came time to record, and we had decided that we were going to do 5 songs each with the Dharma Boys, and we were going to do a split. And they were recording, I think, at
Right.
Big Blue Meanie. We went up and recorded at Nada with John
Yeah.
Clario. And because that was kind of the thing to do at that point. Like John was still. It was like he was in the basement, I think, his mom's house. I think before I know now
Yeah.
he's got a like really nice studio that's like on his own or something. But I think at this time it was at a house. I'm pretty sure it's basement of his.
Yeah, it's the basement of his mom's house, but the
Yep.
studio he has now is literally just down the hill, and it is the garage that he had connected to his mom's house. I believe that's where he still has that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I remember like a lot of bands were telling us like he's doing good, and his rates weren't like astronomical.
He was like $50 a song
Yeah,
or something.
yeah, it was
stupid.
it was cheap. We could afford it, and I mean, God bless John Niclario for doing all that work that he did, but he really did make a great name for himself and ended up going on to do a lot, so many huge recordings.
Oh yeah.
But we really enjoyed working up there with John, and we recorded, and then hadn't made it out yet as a split. We had it. We had all the recordings and the mixes, and I don't even know if we had mastered it yet. And we signed to Jarrett Seltzer's record label, Jarrett from Face First and Houston Calls. Jarrett had, and now Bagels by Jarrett too. I'll just give him a shameless plug.
Yeah.
But he had, his record label was Decibel Records. And
Oh, that's right.
yep, he owned Decibel Records, and he came to us, and we had talked with other labels, other real small labels, but they were in like different states, and we didn't know them, and we didn't know how they could support us. And Jarrett was willing to put some money and help us get the split out with the Dharma Boys, so he signed us. I still have a copy of their record contract, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Oh shit.
And he signed us, and we went back up to Nada, and we reworked it with CJ doing some overdubs and replacement of Chris's parts, because Chris recorded with us at first. I think we had done it before we went on tour for the summer, and I'm hoping my timeline's not too bad. But we went and we re-recorded it, and then it came out. I think the CD release show, I don't exactly remember when that was. I want to say it was like maybe February of 2001, possibly. It was at the West Patterson American Legion, and we had our release show, and that was an awesome show. I think it was one of the best shows we ever played.
Why?
But yeah, why? I think that was the tightest we had ever been. The crowd was really into it. People had really come out for the CD release show. Some friends of ours from Kentucky, they're from Louisville, Kentucky, called My Life Denial. They helped us when we went out there, and then we helped them with a couple shows in New Jersey. They played, like they came out from Kentucky to play, and I just feel like for the vibe and the sound and how well we played, I just feel like that was like the highest pinnacle of my musical life at that point.
How often do you guys practice, like during the week?
We practiced once or twice. When we first started, we were practicing like 3 or 4 times a week.
Oh.
Then, and we had a great luxury about our practice space, because Cameron still to this day lives. He has a 3-bedroom apartment all to himself, which is in like a duplex that his mom lives in a 3-bedroom apartment below him. It's like this big duplex house. So he's had his own 3-bedroom place since he was in high school.
I remember partying there with you guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely you do.
Wait, what town is this in?
North Haledon.
Okay.
It's on Tilt Street in North Haledon.
Okay.
And we had the luxury to practice, because Cameron's mom didn't really mind, and his dad didn't mind, and we just had to be done by like 9 o'clock. But we would meet up at like 5 or 6, and we'd practice right till 9, like 3 times a week. And then once we started playing shows, I think we would only try to get together like once a week. If we had a lot of shows in a row, of course we couldn't, or a lot of shows, between, we might not, because we feel like we were practicing. We were just running through the sets. But yeah, we tried to practice as much as we could.
Did you guys like have any kind of vision of where you wanted to like go? Because you guys, I mean, obviously everyone was always working jobs and stuff. Was there anyone in the band who was like really gung ho about making it, like, going for it?
Yeah, John left college to try to pursue it. He was at Drexel.
Oh wow.
And I was like, at this point, let's see, this is 90. So I was like 25, because I was born in 75. So 24. I was 24 in 99, 25 in 2000, 20. Yeah. I just turned 25 at the end of 2000, actually, December of 2000. So I was on 25. And I was like, I'm either going gung ho for this. Like, my whole thing from day one, I was like, I want to go on tour. I want to be on tour. I just want to tour. I want to play shows. Like that was it. Like I didn't really care beyond that. Like I just wanted to see the country. I wanted to play music, and it was seemed so luxurious to me to travel in a sweaty, smelly, stinky van, pulling a trailer and all over the heat of the middle of cornfields. But John was he really, I think, was driven to kind of, make something of the band. And Red Rover stayed together for another, I think when I left and CJ left the band, it was 2001. And they reshuffled, restructured, retooled, and continued on as Red Rover like the end of 2001, early 2002, and kept playing for like another year till like the end of 2003, I think. Cameron actually got out from behind the kit, and he took over for bass. They got their friend who was in Billy Rivers, Warren, to play drums, and then they found a kid, Dan Kreiner, who's a great guitar player, to come and play lead guitar, because CJ left shortly after I did. And CJ, I remember CJ's goal was he wanted to do the same thing as me. He was like, I just want to tour and record and play music.
Well, he went and did Day at the Fair for a hot minute, and then they left with Sherwood and what's her name? She's a sick drummer. I forget. And they left and did their own thing.
Yeah, and now CJ's playing in Dead Bars, so he's playing all over the place with everybody. They just opened that big Bouncing Souls show in Jersey City or something.
What's Dead Bars?
Dead Bars is a band from Seattle, because CJ moved to Seattle. Now he lives in like Detroit, but he's still playing with Dead Bars. Look them up. Dead Bars is actually they're pretty big. They're playing the Fest this year. They played Pooza Fest in Montreal this year. It's John Maiello, who is also from the Jersey scene. He sings in the band.
John Maiello. Yep. Why am I blanking on this?
Not sure. He looks really familiar. Like I knew him back in the day, but I don't think I really knew him. But CJ's in a band with him now called Dead Bars, and they're pretty big.
Yeah, they look gigantic.
Yeah.
Where is he in the picture? I'm on there.
CJ doesn't even look like CJ anymore. I mean, he still does if you look at him, but he plays guitar. He played drums, I think, when they started.
I think I do see him. He doesn't have glasses anymore.
No.
Okay. Is he got like a blonde beard? There's like a.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. I can say, oh, that's cool. Oh, I always love like. It's just so funny. There's so much stuff out there that it's like you go on the internet and you have your own space that you live in, and you think you just know fucking everything, and then just all of these just microcosms or whatever, just like these bands or scenes or whatever they are that are so huge, and you just have no fucking clue that they exist.
It's always a revelation to me, but it never. I mean, I guess it surprises me for a hot minute, but then it's like, so when you think about it, it's like I remember Rob Heiner telling me that Jack Antonoff was in this band called Fun, and I was like, and he played something for me, and I was like, oh, that's on a car commercial, and then I was like, wait a minute, like these guys are huge,
yeah,
and then you look at Jack now. I mean, Jack's a bona fide, like legit, like music, like rock star, like he's doing things with Taylor Swift and Lorde and all this, like,
really.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're like good friends, and he's written co-written songs with her and Lorde and all these people. Carly Rae Jepsen was on the Bleachers, Unplugged, and I mean, I even followed them for a while through Steel Train that Jack was in, because Evan Winokur and I are still friends. And I remember them coming to Wilmington, and we played wiffle ball in a park. It was Jack and his sister Rachel, and Evan and myself played wiffle ball in a park during a Steel Train show. And and at the time, Fun had already started, but I had no idea. Like and Jack wasn't going to just come up and tell. Jack's always been really humble and kind of quiet. But then like Brian Fallon with Gaslight Anthem, and I'm like, well, fuck, he played in Lanemeyer. Like I used to go to the Randolph Diner with Brian Fallon, smoke cigarettes and drink coffee. He tried out for Red Rover before he joined Lanemeyer.
Yeah.
He came to a tryout for us, and he definitely wasn't into it. But then he joined Lanemeyer, and I love Chris to death. But I really thought that Brian was really good in the band too.
Oh, it was. I don't know if we told the story. I'm kind of just hijacking it for a second, but the spotlight. Chris came to see us. I think we might have talked about it in his interview, but he was living out in LA, and we when we got Brian in, we were just like practice. We just had to get ready to go on tour. We went out with Lawrence Arms for like 2 months, almost 2 months.
I remember that.
And we get to LA, and we were so tight by that point that's when Richard and Stephanie were there, because we played with Newfound Glory in Fado Doe and like Crenshaw, and in Compton. And fucking Chris was he was like, yeah, what do you think? And they're like, this is the best we've ever heard, Lane Meyer. And Chris was like, well, I'm gonna go get drunk. It was so bummed, because Richard and Stephanie were like, this is the best we've ever heard, that band. And he's like, well, I need to get the fuck out of here now. Because
I don't know whether I'm more surprised at the fact that or not surprised, but I don't know whether I enjoyed hearing that story more, or whether just the level of shock that you played in Compton. I don't know what's greater on my internal scale right now. I don't know.
It was the most random place we like pulled up, and this is in like 2000. I don't know, and I mean, we didn't really know California too well. I think that was the first time I'd ever been to California. I remember like driving over the border and thinking like, holy shit, dude, like we're in fucking, because I'd been there when I was younger, so I had been to California when I was a kid, but we drove through the entire fucking country and crossed over into California, which was like, what the fuck? And then we're like in LA playing in fucking Compton. We're like, what's going on here? Like,
it's crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, that show was fucking sick. Yeah, man. I mean, like, I think that the one thing I've learned, or the one thing that kind of stands out to me, it's like with CJ being in this band, and granted, this is the first time I've heard of these guys and Dead Bars, and then Brian being in Gaslight, which is huge, and Jack being in Fun. But I think just there's the people who really just loved it so much they couldn't stop, and then there's the people who wanted it for the wrong reasons, so they definitely stopped. So I think it always weeds out the weak, not the
Absolutely.
weak, but like it weeds out the people that aren't there for the craft, like the people who just truly love that playing music. They're like, I don't know how I'm going to survive, but I don't know how I can do anything else. And I think if they stick with it long enough, sometimes life kind of just rewards you, hopefully, with this. I mean, with two of those guys, it's like giant success.
Yeah, massive success.
It's fucking crazy.
It is. It's awesome. But even to take a look at people, people that maybe musically, but like, you know, you have like Gabe is doing lots of stuff, and he's had reached different levels of big success. But like, look at the last week's interview, Chris Gethard. Like, he's got a television show that went from public television to like true TV, like a national show. And Rachel, Jack Antonoff's sister Rachel, she's like a big, huge like fashion designer. So it's not even so much like, it's what did people learn in that scene, and watching them go off and have great success in pursuing their dreams. I think you're right. It does weed out the people. Like, I often think, like, if I could go back, what would I have done differently? And I feel like I would have like tried to roadie more, or like become a guitar tech, or like, you know, because if I wanted to tour, I didn't necessarily need to be on stage every day, but I could have helped bands, or I could have been a tour manager. I remember Day at the Fair asked me back in 2005. They were on tour, and they came through Wilmington and stayed with me. It was when they toured with Suicide Pact, which those guys were so much fun too.
Yeah.
But they all stayed with me, and I remember, I don't know if it was Rob or Chris asking, making a comment. I don't know how serious they were, but making a comment like, would you be interested in being a tour manager for us? Because like we could use some help. And I remember saying, like, at the time, I was like, guys, I can't even really manage my own life, and you want me to come manage your band? Like, it sounds fun, but I don't think I could do it seriously enough. Like, to me, I think when I got on the road, I would be like, fuck yeah, I'm touring. You know, I don't think it would be about the business. Like, I think I would lose focus, and I wouldn't be very good at it at that point.
Oh, that would have been a nightmare, dude.
Yeah. So, you know, as much as, you know, it wasn't. And I also, that night that they played in Wilmington and they asked me that and stayed, that was the very night I met Devin, who's been my wife now for 12 years. So we met at that Day at the Fair show in Wilmington.
That's right.
That's where I met her in person. Yeah.
Wow, I think
Yep.
you did tell me that. See,
Yeah,
punk rock it's like the glue. It
it
just
is.
connects people.
It sure is.
You know, man, sorry, go on.
No, it's good. No, I'm done. I'm done.
I My nephew right now, he just graduated from high school, and I think I might have talked about this in a recent recording I did, but he's just kind of lost, and I didn't figure out what I wanted to do after the band was done, and I was 22. I was completely lost. That's the only thing I had wanted to do since I was about 15, 16 years old. So I was just like completely lost. And as I moved to LA and waited tables, and then luckily found graphic design. I was really passionate about it. But so my sister's all concerned about my nephew. She's like, "What's he gonna do?" I'm like, "Just give him time." Like I was 24 when I got super stoked on what I was gonna do, and now at 40, I'm like trying to revamp again what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It goes in waves. But I just want to reach out to him and be like, dude, like he's really into writing music. He put out like an album on SoundCloud on his own. It is like hip hop style stuff. It's like skinny, tall, white kid from Bridgewater, Massachusetts, and he's like
Mhm.
really into that shit. And I just want to text him and be like, dude, just find a band that you love and say, dude, I'll fucking roadie for you, or
Yes.
I will go on tour with you and just really see of that life if I really want that lifestyle, or just write. If you're doing nothing all day and you're home, just write as much songs. Like get good at your craft because I
Yeah,
think if you're great at that and you're really passionate, if you have a core of something and it's really good, the right people will find it
I
if
agree.
you stick with it. It's the people that on the kind of like the candy coated surface that when they're thinking there instead of the core of it, that's where shit doesn't work.
Totally. I think you're right, and there's totally something to it. And yeah, I feel like we all have to find our path for sure. And
You just gotta be
I've
excited. You just gotta like show up and be like, what's like I don't know, what am I excited for today?
right.
And
Yep.
it could change too, but at least give you something.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you're right though. There's definitely, and you watch these people that just, they kind of saw the direction, they really believed in something they wanted to do, and they just did it. I mean, Brian Fallon's a perfect example of that. Like we used to sit in the diner. I mean, I remember just how passionate he was about wanting to write songs and be like, you know, be like his heroes and just go down that path. And it was almost like he was so focused. It was almost like tunnel vision
He
on
was
what he wanted to do.
obsessed. He was
Yeah.
absolutely so. When we were on tour with him, all he would do was journal, and not journal. He would just write lyrics. He couldn't
Yep.
stop. He was just music 24/7. When he got
That's
up,
right.
he'd smoke a lot of cigarettes.
Hmm.
He'd write, and then we were driving. He'd always just. He was so. It's like he almost had like he almost like see through you because it's like you couldn't have a real conversation because I think his mind was just I'm just writing songs right now until he found his sound because like what he wrote back in the late 90s early 2000s like it wasn't what it is now. Like
No.
he wasn't writing Bruce Springsteen style songs. He was writing like just he had a hot water music voice and
Yep.
he was trying to figure shit out. So he just stuck with it. But he chipped away until he found the fucking thing. So
He
I don't know.
did, and he found his groove and got to become like best friends with his heroes.
Yeah,
So that's pretty awesome.
yeah. And now he's like kind of isolated because he's famous and I don't think he likes it.
I don't know. Yeah, I think he's living down the shore or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about how did the band because we're coming up we're over an hour and
Okay. Yeah.
I have to go take I think every episode I'm always like I have to go take care of my dog.
I have to go. I have to go
Poor-
pick up my daughter
But
at
like
5.
legit,
So
like
we're
no,
good.
he's legit just like hanging out at home by himself, and I have to go out at 6 o'clock, so I feel so bad.
Well,
Um,
side note, and anybody who doesn't know, I'm going to take over and I'm going to interview for you for a quick second. But I know that your dog's had some issues with, I think, seizures lately. And how is your dog? Okay.
yeah, I don't know. I put him on medication, and he had his worst. He had a cluster a couple weeks ago, or like a week ago. So he's
Okay.
been having them like every 7 to 10 days, which came out of nowhere. But I put him on meds and I changed him to like grain-free food. Everyone's probably have a fucking opinion, but I'm just trying
Right.
everything. But it's awful. It's like watching your your pet seizure out for about a
I know.
minute, it's like, fuck, dude. So, yeah,
And I know we're
yeah,
both big time dog lovers. I still have a Save Cash T-shirt that I bought when Cash was sick years ago in World
yeah.
Dog. And like I know that we're both big dog lovers. So whenever I hear or see stories like that, it definitely it breaks my heart. So that's why I wanted to ask while I had the chance while we were talking.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, I was thinking about making like the save cash thing. So again, we're taking like a side note here, but like I had this Boston Terrier about in 2006. I got her, and when we first got her, about four days in, she had parvo. So this is when MySpace was big. So I made all these shirts that said save cash because me and Sean from Laymire had a T-shirt company. So I made them at cost and sold them, and all the profit I took to paying the fucking vet bills, which were insane.
Crazy, yeah.
But I was trying to think of doing something like that now, where I was like, man, like it's like I almost because I have to do all this brain scan shit with him, or just I don't know, like it's different tests, and I'm thinking like, how can I just like make something that people would want to buy it's just like a shirt that goes to pay these bills. But then I was like, man, how can I like maybe start something like that where it helps like any pet owner with seizures, where all the profits go to help them pay these crazy bills, you know?
Like a daily bread about pets.
Yeah, that daily bread's daily bread. That's about just shit that annoys me.
Thoughts.
Yeah.
All right.
How did
Cool.
yeah, sneaking back in. Thank you though.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. How did you guys officially like how did it come to an end? Well, I mean, well, you kind of said it because like you left, but like what made you officially go, I just need to stop?
There's a couple things. And anybody who knows me knows that I could be emotional. So I know there was a lot of crying at this night that I decided it was time to leave. We were in Cameron's living room. I mentioned earlier, I was 25. I was out on my own. Cameron had I don't want to make it sound like I'm, talking bad about this, where they were at in their lives, but they were younger. So Cameron had this 3-bedroom apartment, and John had the ability to live at home. CJ still had the ability to live at home. I shared an apartment with some roommates, my stepsister and best friend at the time, in Boonton. So I had rent. I had a car. I had car insurance, which was outrageous in New Jersey. I had gas. I was trying to work, and yet I wanted to figure out how I could do this band and financially still support myself, which for a 25-year-old who doesn't know his ass from his elbow, that's something that's like almost inconceivable. And it probably, rightfully so, it probably was like impossible to do for where I was at. I also got to a point where I realized that the scene was kind of changing in the sense that bands were getting better. Like it was becoming more about the music and how polished you could be, and how the production values were getting better and better, and Pro Tools was making everybody sound brilliant. And I got into it with the goal of doing a couple of things. I wanted to be on a CD, and I wanted to go on tour. I had done both of those things, and I was at a point where I was really going to need to buckle down and focus on the craft of becoming a better bass player. And I don't necessarily think I had that drive. I also was in a pretty serious relationship with a girl at the time, which of course didn't work out. So, I mean, I guess that excuse should have been thrown out that day. But I had all these financial responsibilities, didn't feel like spending 3 to 4 hours a day trying to become a better musician was really in the cards for me at that time. And I wanted to kind of I felt like it had run its course, and really my goals weren't lofty enough. My goals were record a CD and go on tour. So if those were my goals, I did it. I hit my goals. So like, to me, I didn't have much else to prove to myself. Which almost, for somebody who's so driven, like we were talking about before, that would never have been good enough. And for where I was at in my life, I was like, well, this is good enough. And there have been times where I regretted it, and other times where I've thought like maybe I should have just stuck it out, because who knows. And I'll tell you what though, and I don't know why CJ left, but I remember CJ being very upset that I was leaving too. And like I said, I think we had very similar visions for like what we wanted to do. Like if we could financially afford it, we would have been in the band like all the year round. And I think he left shortly after that. And I will say this, that when Red Rover got back together with the new lineup of Warren and Dan being in the band, musically, they were tighter than they'd ever been. I helped them. I didn't help them, but I told them about this contest that Face to Face was doing, where if you submit your demo, it was like a Tower Records or something. Every spot it was Midtown, Movie Life, and Face to Face was the tour. And every city that they played, they were picking from these demos at Tower Records. They were picking an opener. And Cameron, I had already left the band, and Cameron got a phone call from somebody in Face to Face or their management or something, inviting them to open for Movie Life Midtown and Face to Face at Irving Plaza.
Holy shit.
So after I left the band, they opened that show. They had their own dressing room. I think I quote, Cameron will probably kill me for saying this, but I remember, I vaguely remember, and maybe I'm embellishing, but I remember Cameron saying that he signed a boob for the first time, like some girl asked to sign her boob. And he's like that, like to, for when you're 23 and you want to kind of be like, that's like a dream come true. It was kind of like at that time period and that age.
When it was like acceptable.
Now it'd be all over Facebook for sexual harassment or something, which maybe rightfully so. And I don't want to go down that road, but I mean, at that time and where we were at, like that was cool, Oh,
yeah.
So they got to do that, and they came down. They played a couple shows in Wilmington and Myrtle Beach that I helped them with, and I got up and sang with them in Myrtle Beach and in Wilmington. So I got to kind of take part in Red Rover's live shows, but they were tighter and better sounding than ever. And they released an EP after I was out of the band. And one of the songs was called a JVix Mega Mix because I helped them write it. So they named the song after me.
Oh, that's funny.
They spelled it a little different. They spelled my last name VIX, but JVix Mega Mix. And,
Dicks.
Great. Yeah. They so to this day, like John and Cameron are still two of my closest, dearest friends. I'm glad that the band didn't end with like bad, ill will or bad vibes or anything. Like I'm glad we've always kind of been able to stay close and stay in touch. And it's just they're the kind of friends that we have in our life where you don't talk to them every day, but when you do, you pick up where you left off.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of people from back then. I mean, I have like my buddies from high school who I reference pretty much in every episode, and then the people I met in the scene. Like, when was the last time you and I saw each other? Was that when you came down here when we went to Chuck's?
Yeah, we went to lunch, and I'm glad we're going to get to do that again next week. But you're another one like you and I mean, I talk to Rob Heiner all the time, but like you're another one where I might not talk to you for 3 months or just see you on Facebook and comment or like something. But when we talk, I always feel like we haven't missed any time, and it's always just good to catch up, but there's certain friends, like I'll like I can always say, like I'll always be friends with this person. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I am. Were
you friends with Heiner back then? Because I mean, when I found out that you and Rob were so close, this was like 2000. This is like when you guys were starting to do that golf thing for a minute.
Yeah.
That was like early. It was like mid 2000s, and he had said that you guys were so close. I had never remembered the two of you hanging out.
Yeah. Rob was the person, and anybody who knows Rob, like Rob's very easy to get along with.
Rob that we're mentioning too. He was in Lanemeyer, he was in Humble Beginnings, he was in Day at the Fair, and I think that's it.
And they just played the I don't know when this is going to come out, but they just played Humble just played the reunion show, and Rob was playing that. Yeah. I was supposed to go to New Jersey for that, but I just couldn't. But yeah, so Rob was in Humble Beginnings, and we were real close with the Dharma Boys, and then all of a sudden it was like every show we were like either trying to get Humble on a show or they were getting us on a show. I remember driving to Massachusetts to play a show with them in like Lawrence or outside of Boston, and Rob and we started to like hang out at diners like during the week back when he was in Humble and I was in Red Rover, because we'd play shows and we'd just like talk between bands, and then we would go to diners. Another one I'd smoke a lot of cigarettes and drink coffee with, but we just started hanging out like outside of the scene. Like we'd meet up for coffee just on a random night, or we'd go to another show together. And we both had a huge, massive love for the New York Yankees. So we would talk about baseball a lot, and it was just kind of like an outlet. And we just bonded and became friends, and we never lost touch. We've always stayed in touch. And he's been like my closest friend for so many years now. But we really got tight in like 2000. I think it was around early 2000, and it's just grown ever since. So yeah, we started a social media site for golfers.
Yeah.
Back in like 2005, Golf Buddy Finder, to connect golfers. And it's funny is now there's actually CBS just bought a company that does exactly just that. It's called Golf Book.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they like bid off Facebook and they called it Golf Book, and I was like, "That's Golf Buddy Finder. Like that is what it was. That was what it was designed to be."
Yeah, it seemed like a cool idea when it came
Yeah.
out. It's one of those things where it's like this one little tweak you probably need to make, and you just couldn't figure it out. Like, what is going to get
Yeah.
people to use this damn thing?
Yeah, it's pretty much it. It was just one of those things. It was just like it's a great idea. We worked hard at it, and then it was kind of like life gets in the way of other things. I mean, it's not, you kind of have to go where where the food's going on the table sometimes.
Yeah,
And,
especially now that you have a kid. So.
Oh yeah. Well, that's a whole nother story. That's a great story though. But anyway, so leaving Red Rover was really tough, but I never wanted to lose sight of the scene, and the whole Facebook group started out of pure nostalgia. It was 2009, and I was like, there really isn't a group for. If Facebook, I had only been on Facebook 2 years at this point too. 2007 was really when I think everybody started getting on Facebook. I think 2006 and 2007, and then beyond. But it was once I realized that you could like start these groups, it just dawned on me that we needed a group. And I've heard some people ask about why is the site 1994 to 2002 or 96 to 2002?
94 to 2002.
It is 94, right? So Weston was like, kind of big 94-ish, and I knew that there was a punk scene going back that far. And 2002 is kind of when I feel like the people that I knew and went to shows with, like all those bands and the scene, like that 99 to 2001 era, that it really like was like this pinnacle. I feel like after 2002, yeah, we did see some huge bands come out of the scene, like My Chemical Romance and some other bands. But I feel like those were the years. I think I went with 94 just for margin of error. I think I stopped at 2002 strictly because I didn't know anything about it afterwards, and I don't feel like the scene was the same. I feel like it changed. I feel like halls were getting shut down and bands were getting big through different ways. They weren't really just playing. I don't know. I just thought it totally changed.
That's why I named this thing like, the podcast that talks about the late 90s, early 2000s, based on I think in the group, but I saw you capped it at 2002. It's like, yeah, like for me, that's when it all just like that scene ended. Because you were talking about how Red Rover stuck around past that. I mean, I remember, and I've talked about this so many times, but just like coming back from LA in 2004 and going to a show a day at the fair and walking in and watching it, it was just dreary.
Yeah.
There was no life in the room. We played a Lane Meyer reunion show in 2005. We did a couple of them. We did two in Jersey. It was like Bloomfield Cafe, Hamilton Street, and then one up in New Bedford. The Bedford show, that was awesome. And the Jersey shows kind of sucked. Like,
Yeah.
It was just like that. But plus, it was almost like having a high school reunion like 5 years after you graduated high school. Like, no one's excited for that shit. Like, 20 years afterwards,
Right.
That's when they're like, oh, let's go. This is going to be awesome. But, yeah, it was just like, I mean, it was great for bands like My Chem and Taking Back Sunday and Brand New and all these bands that were coming up and like Armor for Sleep. There was just a whole new scene, and then people could argue prior to 94 that was their punk scene.
Right, of course. And there's, I mean, you could go back to, the Ramones played their first show in 1974 and CBGBs, and there's lots of scenes, and I think there's lots of waves.
Which is
that happened.
ours. That was
Yeah.
our scene, though.
And
like,
that was
what we
ours.
talked
That was
about.
our
Yeah.
scene and our wave. And New Jersey, you ask anybody around the country, and half these bigger bands that you've interviewed from other parts of the country, Sicko and Braid, and all these other bands, you talk to them, and they all know how crazy good New Jersey was to play. Like, nobody skipped over New Jersey
Yeah.
in 1998, 99, 2000. Like, nobody skipped New Jersey. Like, you had to have it. Even if you had a show in Philly and New York, you were playing at like the Wayne Firehouse or Hoboken or somewhere between New York and Philly. It was like any touring band did. I remember Jimmy Eat World at the Wayne Firehouse with all those bands, River City High and all those other bands.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. It's like Jersey was there. It was always you'd pass through it to get to the city. You get from you pass through it to get to New York City, or you go from New York City and you pass through Jersey to get to Philly. But then when we created, people were going, wait, we can stop in the middle here and we could play a hall show that's treated like it's like a club in the city, but it's there's parking and there's so many kids coming out of nowhere to come see this shit.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Best.
It was just so insane. Like, yeah, there was a different vibe. Like, even now when I go, it was so scary to me back then to go to the city, which I've said, like, just to see it, it was like, I'm in the city and there's like who are these people? None of them are from there. But now when I go to shows or club shows, like, I could still see it from how I would see it as a 17-year-old, but as an adult, I'm like, this shit isn't that scary. It's like, it looks bigger when it's a club, but it's not as intimate as when it was a Legion Hall show.
Right.
It was just inviting, and like it just felt like you could walk in and outside, and you could drive home, and it's just something just so much easier about it, which is actually cool because you brought up James from Fun Size. They're playing a Legion Hall show in Richmond coming up.
Saw that. I'm gonna try to go.
That's crazy. I mean, that's the thing that's missing from these reunion shows that people have put on. It's that they've always been in a club, and it has to be. I couldn't imagine, I'm sorry, like what that would be like if it was in Wayne Firehouse. Like, imagine if they were able to put on a show there.
Oh, forget it. I'd be there a week in advance, and I'd be helping to help Ricky put a stage together.
I wouldn't even want a stage. I wouldn't even want
really just play
stage.
On the floor. Yeah.
I would want a shitty PA.
Right.
And like combo amps.
I remember Lanemeyer with and Rob was, I think, in the band, but it was before I really knew you guys. I was with the Kims, Kim and Kim, and it was in Dover. I was somewhere in Dover,
in
downtown Dover. Maybe, yeah. And I don't even know if it was Lanemeyer yet. It might have been Congress account. I don't know, but I think it might have been first Lanemeyer or one of first Lanemeyer shows. But that was it. There was like, you're on the floor. Eye level with everybody, and even if there's 20 kids, you just felt special, and there was a lot of it was energy. And
wait, no, I know that show. That was in Dover. Yeah, it was in Dover by the Burger King. That was when because Heiner was in the band. You said, right?
I think Heiner was in the band.
Okay, so that was definitely Lanemeyer, and that was we played. I think Humble had just finished recording their EP, and I remember that was when I first heard Faith 98. So when I drove up there, I was dating my girlfriend Emily at the time, and we drove up there in my Volvo to that show, and were walking in the parking lot, and I heard them break into that song, and I just jetted into the hall to just watch them play that song because it was like my favorite thing ever. And
that's awesome.
That was 20 years ago this summer.
Yeah.
That was like July or June maybe. But they had just put it out. Oh, that's so funny. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and you circle back to James. One last thing, I know we want to wrap up, but James, because Fun Size was like my first local punk band that was from out of state, because I was, like I said, I was dating somebody who introduced me, and we would. James actually came up to hang out with Kim even outside of the band, but then I remember they would come up on like school breaks because they were all like either going into college or just. James was actually only like 17. I think he was still in high school, and they would tour on the summertime and on weekends, and they would do these 4-day weekends where they would always come to New Jersey as Fun Size. So I remember traveling all over New Jersey to see Fun Size shows and becoming friends with James, and to this day. I still love it when I get to talk to him. I went and visited him. He's been a bartender at a bar for like 20 years now. The Patrick Henry in Richmond.
Yeah.
It's like this little downstairs like hole in the wall bar, and he's like a legend in the Richmond scene. But yeah, I loved Fun Size. I liked River City High's music. I think they took a massive turn. During a couple of years at that time where I kind of was like, oh gosh,
Well, it became
why?
very country toward
Yeah,
the end. The
yeah,
beginning was a lot more fun size-ish, but it was like fun size with more like fuller, I thought.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they reunited. Obviously, they're playing shows again, and put out that album that you were talking about on your interview with him. But I went up to Richmond when I was living in Virginia. I went up to Richmond to see them open for Blink 182 right after Matt Skiba joined Blink 182.
Oh, Jesus.
And
They opened for
got
them?
yeah, they opened. There's like some radio show.
Holy shit.
And they opened for Blink, and I was asking them if they got to, if they talked to them at all, and they're like, no, we're whatever.
We're not
And it's
allowed
like,
to do that.
yeah, we're not allowed to talk to them. No, they didn't say that. I don't remember what it was, but I don't think they cared because everybody's a lot older now. Like I said, the aura, the mystique of
It's gone.
certain times, it's gone. Like,
Yeah,
I can walk up
there's no
to anybody in
scariness.
any band and be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got over that. I felt that a little bit when I started breaking into this season where I started going outside of Jersey and talking. Like, even like the first episode of this whole thing where I was like, now I'm going to start talking to bands like, Ian from New Found Glory and, fucking Mike Park from Asian Man and Vinny from Less Than
Yeah,
Jake. Like, when I was doing that, I'm like, oh, holy shit. But now it's just become, now it's like, I literally have like fucking like Dennis from 88 will just message me and just like bullshit or just say nice things. And then Chuck is always commenting on episodes, and Brian from Plow is like texting me. I'm like, what is going on? Like it's like I've created this open communication with these people from back then. I just put them on this pedestal like they were the biggest thing in the world. And now to know them personally, just from talking to them for 2 hours and asking them questions, it's like you just build this friendship. I'm like, this is crazy. This is
yeah,
like they've always been normal people. Everyone's always a normal person, but to see that, to not have those 17-year-olds to 19-year-old eye set where you're just there's this huge gap between you and them, and then as you get older, you go, oh, no, we can actually get beers or just bullshit.
right. Yes,
It,
it's different, and you have a whole new set of things to talk about now
I
because
do
most
kind of
people are.
I do kind of
Yeah,
miss that though, because I did love going to see a show, and there is something about that gap that makes it bigger and cooler when they're playing. Like when I saw the Refuse, something, and I was like, holy shit! Like yeah, there's like 10 miles, but or not 10 miles. There's like 10,000 miles between me and these guys, and I'm
right.
fine with that. Even though easily I probably could have talked to the dentist afterwards. He'd be like, yeah, it's like bullshit. But I was like, I want to keep this that far because I want to just be in awe of you. Because
Right,
I
right.
wanted that mystique.
Totally.
But cool, man. Well, I am going to wrap this up. Let me see. Oh yeah, you said I think we kind of touched on it, but you said to make sure it brought up at the end. Talk about relationships you forged through the scene. But I think you pretty much ran through them, like James,
Yeah,
Hunter,
I
and
did.
everybody.
I definitely still have friendships with. I think my biggest thing is to this day, anybody who knows, and if you look at probably 50% of the pictures of me on Facebook, I'm typically wearing a Weston shirt.
Yeah.
Weston is kind of the band that really, I mean, they've been like my favorite. When they reunite, I typically travel. Last time I saw them was last year around this time, or I think it was October of last year in DC. They were doing a run of shows with Chuck, but Chuck didn't play the DC show. He played the other three, but I went to that DC show because it was the closest to me. And I've become friends. Like I was friends with Dave Weston back in the day. I got to be friendly with him, but like just knowing Jim and Jesse and Chuck and Jeremiah. Jeremiah and I we have a lot in common, and we've chatted on Facebook so much that we've actually done a lot of stuff. And my company just designed a logo for their new flower shop that they're opening in Wyoming. So
Wait, is it
I've
Wyoming or Montana? Am I getting
Wyoming. They're in
okay?
Wyoming. They're in Jackson Hole.
Oh, Jackson Hole. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
They got a big sky.
But so I've like there's been bands like that I've been so lucky and fortunate enough to know on a outside of a scene level, and I'm not intimidated by, because there are people that I wasn't intimidated in a scary way, intimidated in like a shy way, to talk to, and they've all been so nice. But yeah, I know, and I'll sum it up too, because you always ask about scene ethics, and I think it is relationships.
I will guide this interview, Jay.
Go ahead and guide it.
I'm kidding.
So I'm gonna take over. But no, that ties it all up. It's being friends with Chris and Rob and all. I feel like I went to high school at Jefferson with all you guys. Because I become friends with all you guys, and I feel like that was through Rob. He kind of just welcomed me into your whole group. But staying in touch with people from those days, and of course through that group, I mean, I've been talking to, there's so many people that I remember and that remember me, that I still to this day through Facebook, I'm always happy to comment on something or like something or chat somebody, or people will just write me out of the blue sometimes and say, what's up, or what are you doing these days? And I think that was, from a scene ethics standpoint, you mentioned how you always thought we were almost like so nice that it was like is something off about them or something. And I feel like with anything in life that I've learned in the last 20 something years is try your best. And I'm not always good at it. Try your best to think that maybe somebody's in a worse position than you are, and try to just be nice to everybody. I get mad like anybody else, and I've put people down, and I've said nasty, horrible things at times in my life, because none of us are perfect, but except for you.
That's right.
Kidding. But I feel like that's the biggest thing. And I remember being in that scene. I don't know how many people were fake or not, but it seemed like people were nice and were trying to get along. And I think that was a scene ethic, that there was a sense of community. And I feel like that's probably, to circle all the way back, why the North Jersey pop punk group got started, was just to keep that community together in some way when our lives have gone in a million different directions.
So you answered the final question.
You didn't even have to ask.
Well, then I'm going to flip it, and okay. Yes, but I am going to ask you. Okay, so, everyone listening, I always ask what scene ethics do you still hold on to this day? So Jay just answered that. But I usually ask before they do that to plug something, and Jay has actually been the last two sponsors that I've had for the Chris Gethard show, which was. That definitely worked in your favor, because that had a shit ton of downloads, by the way.
Oh my God, when I saw that, I was like, I've been looking for a way to help support Mike's podcast. This sounds like a good time to do it.
Yeah, that one had the most, that was the biggest Friday of downloads I'd had to date. And then awesome. He also sponsored the Tom Martin episode, which is launching tomorrow, but when you hear this, it'll be weeks prior to this.
Right.
So Jay has a marketing company, which actually kind of we talked when I was on the road. You were just in the beginning of building it, and we got a couple phone calls because it just have a soundboard, and then it was just a couple of calls, and he just fucking rolled with it, and then built this thing where he got employees and freelancers and things like that to take on these projects. And so I'm gonna guess that's the thing you're gonna plug, but if you don't plug that, then I'll say you should check out JVI Mobile. So JVIMobile.com.
Sorry.
But go plug whatever. Just end this. You plug what you'd like to plug.
That is what I'd like to plug. JVI Mobile Marketing is a digital marketing agency. I started as a side hustle in 2012, and it's grown where it's still mostly me, but I still have contractors and assistants that do stuff for me, but it's grown, and it's been something that I've done full time for a few years. And really the goal of JVI Mobile is to help small businesses just kind of find their way online, whether it's, running Facebook ads or chatbots or building a website, or, a lot of times it's just business owners, they just don't know where to start or what they should do or how they should market their business or what tools they should be using. And I like to come in from a I like to come in nice and easy from a coaching and consulting standpoint, and then go in for the kill and sell them lots of services.
Take all their money.
Take all their money. But yeah. So luckily, you know, I've had some wins and I've had some losses along the way. Like anything else, I've had some massive successes and some giant failures, and you learn from the failures and you learn from the success, and just keep moving forward. And you know, if anybody is looking to start a company, or they don't really know what to do online, I'd be happy to gently have a conversation with them and then take all their money.